West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Well, thanks to Donald Trump and the Republican Party adopting Trumpian methods, we now tonight know the name of the next Republican nominee for the United States Supreme Court. If Donald Trump is the next Republican president, then his short list for the Supreme Court will include only one name. That is probably also the case for Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, if he is the next Republican president, including the fact that that name comes from Florida. This future Supreme Court nominee is young enough to remain at the top of the Republican shortlist for the Supreme Court for as long as it takes for another Republican to win the Electoral College. This future Supreme Court nominee is about 20 years away from turning 60. Aileen Mercedes Cannon publicly applied for the job of Supreme Court Justice in writing yesterday in a 24-page opinion ordering a so-called special master to examine all of the evidence seized by the FBI from Donald Trump's winter home in Florida. Judge Aileen Mercedes Cannon, who was appointed to a federal judgeship in the last months of Donald Trump's presidency, is now only in her second year as a federal judge and has suffered a great deal of what she would call reputational harm in the last 24 hours since she issued her 24-page opinion, which has no connective tissue to pre-existing legal scholarship in America. There is no known legal reason for anything in the judge's order, and so Judge Aileen Mercedes Cannon did what Donald Trump would have done if he were a federal judge. She just made it up. One of the most absurd notions in her order, giving Donald Trump everything he asked for, is the idea that a future indictment of Donald Trump based on this evidence, quote, would result in reputational harm. The only way Donald Trump could suffer reputational harm is if the evidence contained child pornography, which it most assuredly does not. You cannot suffer reputational harm if you have already destroyed your reputation. If you already got caught, as Donald Trump did, paying $130,000 to porn star Stormy Daniels to buy her silence about having sex with you shortly after your current wife gave birth, you cannot suffer reputational harm now. You cannot suffer reputational harm now after getting caught in 2016 saying this.
Yeah, that's it, with the gold. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the. I can do anything.
Donald Trump has already told this judge and the world that he personally believes it is impossible for him to ever suffer reputational harm.
I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
Donald Trump's reputation could not be worse among the people who refuse to vote for him, and his reputation can never be harmed with the people who do vote for him. But Judge Aileen Mercedes Cannon wrote an order to save Donald Trump from reputational harm. That was her phrase, reputational harm. You're going to hear from some lawyers in a moment who will give you their professional view of what Judge Cannon did. But for those of you who didn't go to law school, you need only know that she claims she is issuing an order to protect Donald Trump's reputation. Protect his reputation from the harm of a possible future indictment, and never mind that every indictment ever issued in this country has hurt the reputation of the person named in the indictment. Sometimes those criminal charges are dismissed. Sometimes the indicted person is found not guilty in court. And throughout that process, there is nothing that can protect the defendant's reputation other than the strength of the defendant's defense. And we have not heard one word of Donald Trump's defense of why he was in possession of federal government property, including nuclear secrets. Not one word of explanation or defense from Donald Trump about that. Not one word from Donald Trump trying to save himself right now from reputational harm. But a federal judge appointed by Donald Trump has taken on the job of protecting Donald Trump from reputational harm. That is something Donald Trump couldn't do for himself when he settled the Trump University fraud case for $25 million that he had to pay to the victims of his fraud. We could fill this hour with one-liners of Donald Trump's poisonous reputation from his days as a young nightclubbing landlord accused by the federal government, along with his father, of using racist practices in renting apartments, violating civil rights law, to standing accused tonight in a lawsuit by E. Jean Carroll of rape, and standing accused tonight as a defendant in a lawsuit brought by Capitol Police officers against Donald Trump for his incitement of violent insurrection on January 6th and the physical attack and brutality against police officers at the Capitol that day. Capitol Police say Donald Trump did it. Capitol Police say Donald Trump attacked them every bit as much as the people who were hitting them with baseball bats and hitting them with bear spray and the spear end of Trump flags and American flags. That man, who is already defending Trump in those cases, has no reputation to protect. And a federal judge he appointed decided to do that. Sometimes a judicial opinion is about the law and the Constitution and not about the author of the opinion. That is true of some of the most important judicial appointments in the history of this country. Brown versus the Board of Education was a unanimous opinion by the United States Supreme Court in 1954, desegregating America's schools. The Supreme Court's order to President Richard Nixon was a unanimous decision of the Supreme Court ordering the President of the United States to hand over evidence to a special prosecutor investigating that president. That case was decided on the law and the Constitution, not politics, and certainly not because of who appointed those Supreme Court justices. 3 of those justices who ordered Richard Nixon to hand over evidence to a prosecutor were appointed by Richard Nixon. And that is what made us believe in the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, and sometimes even the nobility of the Supreme Court. And now those days are gone, because Donald Trump won the Electoral College and won the power to appoint federal judges. In using his appointment power, Donald Trump was not guided by qualifications or the Constitution. He was guided by the Godfather.
Someday, and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service for me.
Someday, and that day may never come, I will call upon you to do a service for me. The day came that Donald Trump needed a service from Judge Aileen Mercedes Cannon. And she did it. That's the story. That's the story. All the legalisms aside, it is a story as simple and clear and dark and sinister as the story told by Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo 50 years ago in their Oscar-winning screenplay, The Godfather. In her 24-page questionnaire filed with the Senate Judiciary Committee before her confirmation for her federal judgeship, she was asked how she would handle potential conflicts of interest. And Judge Cannon said in writing, "I will evaluate any other real or potential conflict or relationship that could give rise to appearance of a conflict on a case-by-case basis." She said she would consider recusal where necessary. She said in writing to the Senate Judiciary Committee, simply the appearance of a conflict could be a reason for her to recuse herself from a case, but instead of recusal, she has publicly embraced the appearance of conflict in giving the person who appointed her to her judgeship everything he asked for. And in the process, Judge Aileen Mercedes Kennan has suffered massive reputational harm among fair-minded legal analysts and scholars and other judges, but at the same time has surely secured for herself the position at the very top of a list for the next Republican appointment to the Supreme Court.
It is Wednesday, the 7th of September of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and we are visited with Little Ginger, the Yorkie Poo. Damn her. She's the little yapping dog. But anyway, we've also been having some power issues here in the region because of heat and because of wildfires. So we've been working around it and trying to stay online, as they say, but you can only do so much when there is no power for anyone. So thank you for you out there who have been hanging in with us. It is much appreciated. Because of all those issues, we are a bit behind, and so we probably should just get right on into what we have in store for you and get right on into the news read in this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Yes, Trump has no reputation to protect. He hasn't had one since before he got kicked out of the Sharper Image. Jeez. On the rest of the menu, citing the 14th Amendment, a judge in New Mexico ordered Otero County Commissioner and Cowboys for Trump, Couy Griffin, be removed from office effective immediately. Yes. And Steve Bannon now faces a state indictment in New York over the federal conviction that Trump pardoned him for. That's how this works. And California authorities, the FBI and DHS report that the cyberattack that disabled computer systems across the Los Angeles Unified School District over the holiday weekend was criminal in nature. I think cyberattacks normally are that, you would think. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where long simmering tensions are at a dangerous level after Turkish President Erdogan issued a thinly veiled invasion threat against NATO ally Greece. And Japan's defense minister has ordered a special investigation into growing reports of sexual assault after allegations of harassment were brought by a former soldier. Change is coming even to Japan. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the left across the page from that chat room link near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the link to our Patreon page, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, it would be very helpful, and thank you for those of you who have. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and we thank Tom for doing so. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's 10 minutes before showtime, and you can find those show notes and links on my Twitter feed, so go do it. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. All right. Power outages throughout the whole region. Thank you very much. So much for, living in the modern world, huh? Well, modern world is upon us, and it looks like we're going back to primordial states of being. Could be. All right, this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays, is by Emily Singer out of the American Independent. A judge in New Mexico ordered that Otero County Commissioner Couy Griffin be removed from office effective immediately as a result of Griffin's participation in the January 6th insurrection at the United States Capitol. Griffin is a former rodeo rider who co-founded the group Cowboys for Trump. In March, Griffin announced he would not seek re-election. Later that month, a federal judge convicted Griffin of illegally entering restricted U.S. Capitol grounds on the day of the riots, led by supporters of former President Donald Trump. In June, Griffin was sentenced to 14 days in jail and was given a $3,000 fine for his role in the attack. Yesterday, Tuesday, New Mexico County District Judge Francis J. Matthew ruled that Griffin violated the 14th Amendment of the Constitution when he entered the restricted grounds of the Capitol to try to block the transition of power from Trump to Biden. The 14th Amendment states that anyone who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the United States is barred from holding state or federal office. In his opinion, Matthew wrote that political violence predictably occurred at the Capitol on January 6th, and that Griffin made that happen. The 49-page ruling lays out Griffin's behavior in the lead-up to the January 6th attack, his actions on that day, and the comments he made following his participation in the violent attempt to keep Trump in office. offering is out of the Washington Post by Shayna Jacobs, Jacqueline Almani, and Josh Dawsey. And oh my, is Steve Bannon ever so angry. He's been taking to the airwaves today, expressing his disdain at everything that is America, because that's what this fascist does. Stephen K. Bannon is expected to surrender to state prosecutors on Thursday to face a new criminal indictment, weeks after he was convicted of contempt of Congress and nearly 2 years after he received a federal pardon from Trump in a federal fraud case. The precise details of the state case could not be confirmed yesterday, last evening, but people familiar with the situation, speaking on condition of anonymity to discuss a sealed indictment, suggested the prosecution will likely mirror aspects of the federal case in which Bannon was pardoned. In that indictment, prosecutors allege that Bannon and several others defrauded contributors to a private $25 million fundraising effort called We Build the Wall, taking funds that donors were told would support construction of a barrier along the U.S.-Mexico border. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which handles state-level prosecutions, has been evaluating Bannon's involvement in that scheme since shortly after Trump pardoned him. Presidential pardons only apply to federal charges and cannot prohibit state prosecutions. Bannon, a former top strategist, for Trump, who was briefly a White House aide, pleaded not guilty to the federal charges in August of 2020 after authorities pulled him off a luxury yacht and brought him to court. He was accused of pocketing $1 million in the scheme. Months later, in the last hours of his presidency, Trump included Bannon on a sweeping clemency list of about 140 people. Alejandra Reyes-Velarde of the Los Angeles Times brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The cyber attack that disabled computer systems across the Los Angeles Unified School District was criminal in nature, but by Tuesday night, most online services, including key emergency systems, were operating safely. Although the attack was carried out with a ransomware tool, the nation's second-largest school system has not received a ransom demand. An investigation involving the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and local law enforcement is underway, underscoring the seriousness of the attack, which was detected at 10:30 p.m. Saturday night. Besides taking the district's website offline, the attack resulted in staff and students losing access to email. Systems that teachers use to post lessons and take attendance also went down. Superintendent Carvalho said no social security numbers or medical information was stolen. Authorities moved to shut down many of the district's most sensitive platforms over the weekend as the attack was underway. By shutting down all the systems, we were able to stop the propagation of this event, restricting its potential damage, Carvalho said. That was the right call at the right moment. By late Sunday night, Officials determined that most vital systems were usable, and Carvalho decided to open schools as scheduled yesterday, Tuesday. Number one, we are experiencing a fairly normal school day, and that was our intent, Carvalho said in a news conference at the Roy Ball Learning Center just west of downtown. The district's technical staff, aided by federal and local law enforcement and other government experts, evaluated the threat and damage before gradually restoring systems. Carvalho described the attack as launched by a ransomware tool that temporarily disabled systems, froze others, and had access to some degree of data. Investigators, he said, have advised him to provide few details about the nature of the attackers as the breach is under investigation, meaning Cyrillic might be involved in the coding? Among the major challenges yesterday, Tuesday morning, was a need for every student and employee to change their passwords. Carvalho said an initial glitch thwarted efforts to make this fix until about 9 a.m. Within minutes after that, he said, the number of reset passwords soared from about 5,000 to more than 50,000. At 8 a.m., An 8 a.m. update included a staggered schedule for changing passwords, with administrators and teachers going first, followed by support staff, high school students, and finally, elementary and middle school students. For nearly everyone, the password must be changed at a district site, but an exception will be made for 7,000 students in full-time remote learning. These students and parents can use the district tech help hotline, although the wait could be long. The district's webpage was partially restored by early Tuesday morning, but the Board of Education page, which lists meetings and provides agendas and public reports, was still down in the early afternoon. The district did not announce the attack until Monday night because, Carvalho said, a critical assessment and response was in progress, and because the release of information had to be vetted through different agencies with a role in the investigation. But teachers continued to have problems with the system Monday morning. One teacher reported that she was unable to log in. Some teachers are under the impression they can change their LAUSD password, then log in, but the password site is down, said one teacher. Officials said they have been working around the clock to solve the multi-layered problem. Indeed. All right, let's us now get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Gabby Nicole. This week, 3,000 Years of Longing is out of the bottle. Based on a short story by A.S. Byatt, George Miller presents a visual delight on the big screen. An ancient genie, referred to as Jinn, is released from his bottle by a lonely scholar, played by Tilda Swinton. Idris Elba, as the Jinn, offers the standard 3 wishes, with the well-known stipulations, but the scholar doesn't trust him. She spends 3/4 of the film listening to his stories over the past 3,000 years out of curiosity and to preserve her best interests. The final quarter of the film is spent following the repercussions of her wishes, which is far less compelling. The visual effects are by far the highlight of this film. Miller's effects team hits the sweet spot where the work is so believable you forget that you're watching the work of a computer program. I would have been satisfied with a film following the pursuits of the Jinn and felt no real connection to Tilda Swinton's character. I left the theater wanting more, and not in a good way. I couldn't help but question if I was supposed to get something more from the film. Swinton and Elba's acting is excellent, as is expected of these renowned actors, but good acting can only take you so far in a film. Without spoilers, the encounters between the two characters reminded me of E.T. Fans of special effects prowess will enjoy this film, as well as those interested in mythology. The plot nods to popular folklore and legends stretching back to King Solomon. The film takes place in modern times, so modern that background characters wear face coverings, presumably to protect against COVID-19, the first film I have seen to do this without making it more central to the plot. 3,000 Years of Longing, while overall a beautiful film for the eyes, left me longing for more in the plot. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Gabby Nicole. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Ashley Papp. It's summertime in New York City. Birds are chirping, insects are scurrying, and everything feels alive. While recent heat waves have pushed a lot of us indoors to the respite of air conditioning, the critters of this city were left to fend for themselves.
Many would be surprised that they're going to be doing the same exact things that most humans are doing. They're not going to be pushing it. They're going to be taking their time and seeking those, shadier spots of the park.
That's Sunny Correo, an environmental scientist.
I work with New York City Parks Department as part of our wildlife unit, a small but mighty team that focuses on how New Yorkers can coexist with wildlife in an urban environment.
From the birds and squirrels to raccoons and even the turtles, here's how urban wildlife is responding as the mercury rises. Let's start with the birds.
Obviously, there are a lot of different species of birds that can be found all across the city, from your pigeons to your larger birds of prey. And what's interesting about birds is they don't sweat through their skin like humans and other mammals do.
Instead, birds lose heat through exposed skin, which, if you think about the last time you saw a bird in Prospect Park, there really isn't much exposed aside from their feet, legs, and beak. Sometimes, when temps really spike, birds can pant, kind of like a dog, to get rid of their excess heat. Ultimately, these tactics help, but usually aren't enough during a heat wave. So
they'll find everything from a little puddle from a recent rainstorm, or maybe the hydrants that are open down the street, to fountains, and even the spray showers in our playgrounds across the city. You can find birds that will be seeking refuge in the water to kind of help cool off.
Aquatic turtles can almost always be found near the ponds and lakes of our urban sprawl. On a normal day, you might spot a small stack of turtles near the water. This is because they're ectotherms, meaning their bodies rely on external things for heat. Piling on top of one another or on a warm rock surface helps to keep the turtle's core body at a healthy temp. When things get too hot, like during NYC's recent heat wave, they change their behavior a bit. Instead, they head into the water and spread out.
Basically, they're hanging out at the pool all day. They're going to be floating at the very surface of the water so that they can still get some of the sun, but any extra heat that might be a little dangerous to their body temperature, to their core temperature, they will be able to dissipate into the water.
For fur-covered critters like squirrels, cooling off in the pond or the playground water park isn't an option. When the heat rises in the city, these little mammals can be seen doing a funny posture that's known as splooting.
Basically, that means they're just spreading out on a surface on their stomach with their forelimbs forward and their hind legs backwards, just kind of splat on the ground.
That increased skin to surface area helps squirrels dissipate more heat to the ground, which, under a shady tree in Central Park, is way cooler than the ambient air. Raccoons, on the other hand, have developed a slightly different tactic. They head to parts of the park that have kind of natural air conditioning.
I certainly know of areas that are cooler than others. They kind of have these small microclimates to them. I know where the shady benches are.
In our most recent heat wave, Correo noticed raccoons and humans enjoying the shade of a wooded gazebo that's in one of the cooler areas of Central Park. While the humans sought refuge on the benches below, the raccoons were softly snoozing on the lush rooftop above. Seth Magley is an urban ecologist based in Chicago. In 2021, he started building a network of fellow urban critter enthusiasts from around the world. Collectively, they're called the Urban Wildlife Information Network. They're working to collect information about critters in a similar way so that it can be compared across different cities.
Ultimately, it's all with the goal of trying to create more wildlife inclusive cities. We are sort of also united by our desire to make cities part of the solution to the biodiversity crisis and to help reduce human-wildlife conflict and increase human-wildlife coexistence in all of the massively urbanizing areas around the world.
In Chicago, Magley and his team have been watching their city's wildlife for about 10 years. Altogether, they have over 100 camera traps set up across different types of urban environments, from the downtown loop and city parks to nature preserves and suburb golf courses. And during times of extreme heat,
we do definitely seem to see reduced movement. It seems like when it gets very hot, animals just sort of hunker down where they are. It's probably so energetically difficult to move around when it's so hot.
Although this coping mechanism works for a short-term spike in temp, it's not ideal over a longer period because it means less time to search for food or a new mate. And as Magley and his network of urban researchers look toward the future in climate change projections, they anticipate bigger shifts. Temps everywhere are projected to warm. So wildlife in urban settings and beyond will likely have to shift their normal territories a bit further north to where it feels more comfortable to what they're already used to.
We don't have armadillos in Chicago, but we have them in the southern part of the state, and they seem to be migrating north. And so I'm starting to have to take questions about what are we going to do if there's armadillos in Chicago, right? Which is unimaginable, except on a planet that is warming. There's a million other questions, I think, like that. As a lot of these species, at least in this hemisphere, make these kind of northward shifts, they're going to come into contact with cities in places we didn't expect.
Only time will tell how our urban wildlife reacts to these longer-term shifts in temperature. For now, it sounds like urban critters, so long as they're healthy, are totally capable of handling a few days of extreme heat here and there. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Ashley Papp.
This is 60 Second Science. I'm Tulika Bose. You probably already know what a black hole is, but have you ever heard of the black hole information paradox? I'm here with Clara Moskowitz, our space and physics editor, who just edited a big special issue for Scientific American on black holes. Hey, Clara.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So, Clara, what are we here to talk about today?
We're here to talk about the black hole information paradox, which has been a problem in physics for a long time. Basically, black holes seem to break the rules of physics. And part of the reason why is because we have to use two different theories to describe them, and the two theories do not get along. On the one hand, we have quantum mechanics, which describes the world of the very small, atoms and particles. On the other hand, we have general relativity, which describes things that are very big, very massive, very large. And most things in the world don't require both theories. They're either big or they're small. Black holes are both. Black holes are the densest things in the entire universe, and they take up very little space, but they have so much mass. You really need both theories. And yet, when you try to combine quantum mechanics and general relativity, everything goes crazy.
How can two rules of physics not apply?
Each one works perfectly in its own realm. So quantum mechanics does very well describing everything that's subatomic, everything that we can't see, that's very small. And general relativity works perfectly to describe very big things, like the motions of planets. But we almost never have to combine them in one example, except for black holes. Black holes take up very little space, but they have so much mass that general relativity and quantum mechanics equally apply. And yet, when you try to combine the two theories, they don't work together.
But how exactly do they not work together?
Basically, when you try to combine them, the equations break. They give infinities. They just don't produce answers or calculations that you can use, that you can work with. And it's a sign that something is missing. We don't fully understand something. And the thing that we don't fully understand is gravity. So quantum mechanics has been made to work very well with every other theory and every other force of nature. Quantum mechanics can describe electromagnetism and the strong and the weak force that works inside atoms, but it can't describe gravity. And yet, with black holes, you have something that's teensy tiny, and yet the gravity is super strong. And when we try to describe what's going on in them, we can't. We don't have a theory to tell us everything about how a black hole works. And we really don't understand what's going on inside them.
How long have we known about this paradox?
So this paradox dates back 50 years. And the story basically starts with Stephen Hawking. In 1974, he discovered that black holes leak. They let out radiation. Over time, particle by particle, they get smaller and smaller and smaller, and eventually they completely disappear. Sounds weird, but okay. The problem is that if black holes can disappear, so can all the information about what fell into them. And that is a huge problem because that breaks the laws of physics. According to quantum mechanics, information can never be destroyed. You might think information is destroyed all the time when you shred an invoice or burn a book, for instance. But according to physics, if you had complete knowledge of the book ahead of time, of every atom and every molecule within the book, then you could follow each atom and molecule through the burning process to see where they all ended up, and everything would be fine. But black holes aren't like this. If a black hole is destroyed, it's completely destroyed, and there's no way to access the information that it once held. And that can't be. That's a paradox.
Wow, but obviously there's new information and new research. Can you tell me about it?
Right, so for 50 years, scientists have been puzzling over this issue and trying to figure out what's going on and whether there's a way to save the information that's inside black holes. And finally, in the last few years, they've had a major breakthrough. The breakthrough involves several very mind-bending concepts. One of them is wormholes, which is bridges in space-time. These are shortcuts in space-time that connect two very distant points. And the other has to do with the weird rules of quantum mechanics. According to quantum mechanics, everything that can happen does happen. So a particle, for instance, doesn't just travel along a straight line from point A to point B. Instead, it takes all of the possible paths that could connect point A and point B. It circles up, it loops down, it twists around before arriving at point B. And all of those things happen simultaneously. Well, when you apply this concept to black holes, it means that you have to consider all of the possible arrangements of space-time within black holes, because all of them are simultaneously real. And one of the possible arrangements of space-time is a wormhole. So these are these weird theoretical bridges, shortcuts in space and time. And there's a chance that the inside of a black hole is connected to the inside of another black hole through a wormhole. Well, you have to take this possibility, this chance, into account, physicists recently figured out. And when they did, everything changed. The equations that they used to describe the entropy in black holes, basically a description of the amount of disorder, gave a totally different answer, and they pointed to a solution for a way that information could escape black holes. And this way is called an island. Now, of all the weird things we've talked about already, this is the weirdest. This is the idea that deep within black holes, there's a special region called an island. And this region is both inside the black hole and also outside the black hole at the same time. And that the information that's within the island, since it's inside and outside, can escape the black hole's destruction and is never truly destroyed, even if the black hole evaporates away completely and disappears. And this seemed to resolve the paradox. So there are a lot of questions still to be answered. Everything's not totally settled, and not all physicists agree that this is the solution. But it definitely does seem to point a way forward toward resolving the paradox, showing how information can escape from black holes, and pointing us toward a future where we can describe black holes finally with a consistent physical theory. Just in case you want to know more about some of these really mind-bending concepts that we've been talking about, check out the September issue of Scientific American, where we have a bunch of articles describing in detail all of these new ideas, along with a really cool video that draws it out for you if you're a visual person and want to see what these things might look like.
Thanks for listening. For 60 Second Science, I'm Talika Bose.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. Vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
In the world of work, what two occupations might seem to have the very least in common? How about long-haul truck drivers and school librarians? Yes, an odd pairing, but solidarity forever. Start with truckers. The job is literally a grueling haul. You're wrangling a massive 18-wheeler some 500 miles a day for 2-3 weeks straight, putting up with traffic jams, storms, bad roads, lunatic drivers, helter-skelter scheduling, truck stop food, sleeping in the truck, and battling fatigue, aches, your bladder, and loneliness. Trucking used to be a good union job with decent pay and conditions, until the deregulation craze 4 decades ago brought in Wall Street profiteers and fast-buck hustlers who turned the industry into anti-union exploiters. As a result, the yearly quit rate for drivers is almost 100%. But rather than retaining drivers by upping pay and stopping their torturous treatment, the corporate bosses have rushed to Washington, demanding access to an even cheaper pool of low-wage workers, teenagers. Yes, put an 18-year-old on that 18-wheeler and keep them profits rolling. And here's another good job suddenly turned ugly: school librarian. Yes, while student enrollments rise and the need for these nurturers of our society's literacy is greater than ever, their quit rate is soaring, not because of pay or long hours, but because of raw right-wing politics. These dedicated, invaluable educators are literally being abused by demagogic GOP politicians and their extremist partisans who've launched an anti-librarian crusade, including book banning and witch hunting. Come on, how twisted are you to pick on librarians? This is Jim Hightower saying, forget the law of supply and demand. Today's job market is being ruled by greedmeisters and political lunatics.
What is the Speech and Debate Clause, and why should you care? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In November 2020, Senator Lindsey Graham made telephone calls to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, the state official responsible for overseeing elections. State prosecutors now want Senator Graham to testify before the state grand jury that is investigating potential illegalities surrounding the 2020 presidential election in that state. But Senator Graham is claiming in federal court that he can't be required to testify because of the Speech and Debate Clause. The Speech and Debate Clause, part of Article 1, which sets forth the powers of Congress, says that senators and representatives for any speech or debate in the House or the Senate shall not be questioned in any other place. And the Supreme Court has clearly ruled that the Speech and Debate Clause extends to legislative activities that are part of the elected official's job. So, with regard to Senator Graham's case, the federal district court has ruled that the Speech and Debate Clause does shield Senator Graham from having to answer questions that would intrude on his legislative fact-finding. But the court also ruled that the Speech and Debate Clause does not prevent questions that would inquire about potentially pressuring election officials to change the election results and related matters. The case now heads back to the Court of Appeals, where Mr. Graham's brief is due by October 11th. An important decision on the Speech and Debate Clause is forthcoming. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1980. The 32nd annual Emmy Awards show took place despite 51 of the 52 nominated performers boycotting the event. At issue was a strike by the members of the Screen Actors Guild. Powers Booth was the only nominated actor to attend. He won the Emmy that year for portraying the cult leader Jim Jones in a made-for-TV movie. In his acceptance speech, he acknowledged his lonely presence at the Emmys. He said, "This is either the most courageous moment of my career or the stupidest." SAG members, along with the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists and the American Federation of Musicians, all went on strike that summer. Members of the Screen Actors Guild were displeased with their salaries. They wanted a 32% increase. They were also concerned about changes in the industry. They did not feel they were being compensated for the revenue they helped generate through paid cable and video cassettes. The Screen Actors Guild had its origins in the Maskers Club. Actors formed that club because they were upset with the grueling hours expected of them by Hollywood studios. Eventually, in 1933, the Screen Actors Guild was started. After initial hesitation by some big-name actors to join the union, SAG membership grew from 80 to more than 4,000 members. Many famous actors supported the union, including Humphrey Bogart and James Cagney. In the late 1940s, future President Ronald Reagan was elected president and served as president of SAG for 7 terms. The 1980 strike was one of the longer strikes in the union's history, lasting 94 days and settling at the end of October.
Hooray for Hollywood, that phony super coney Hollywood.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 67 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting temperatures a tad cooler than yesterday. We're looking at about 98, so that would be good if it was really that much cooler, since we topped off about 106 yesterday at the mothership. And the power outages overnight are heat-related and wildfire-related, so that's what we expect. But partly cloudy throughout the day, which would give us a little bit less high temperatures, one would hope. Winds will be out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Clear skies overnight with lows in the mid to upper 50s, winds light and variable. And then sunny tomorrow with highs in the low 90s. Winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. When we get updates for our coronavirus numbers, we will give them to you. But for now, ragweed pollen is rated low right outside the window in Rogue River. The air quality index for the region is good at 50 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is high at level 6. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 29.99 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 68%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 68 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 66 with rain and a flood advisory. Rome is 87 and fair. Kyiv is 63 and fair. Kabul is 72 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 82 and fair. Tokyo is 78 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 54 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 65 degrees and fair with a smoke advisory. And New York is 70 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Andrew Wilkes of the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Troubled relations between regional rivals Turkey and Greece worsened yesterday, Tuesday, with Turkey's president doubling down on a thinly veiled invasion threat, and Athens responding that it's ready to defend its sovereignty. Turkey and Greece have decades-old disputes over an array of issues, including territorial claims in the Aegean Sea and disagreements over the airspace there. The friction between the neighbors has brought the NATO allies to the brink of war 3 times in the last half-century. Turkish President Erdogan said Turkey could, quote, come all of a sudden one night, end quote, in response to perceived Greek threats, suggesting a Turkish attack on its neighbor cannot be ruled out. Questioned about his earlier use of the phrase over the weekend and the possibility of Turkish military action, Erdogan reiterated the expression. What I am talking about is not a dream, he said at a news conference in the Bosnian capital of Sarajevo. If what I said was what we could come one night all of a sudden, it means that when the time comes, we can come suddenly one night. Greek Foreign Minister Dendias said that for days, Turkish officials have been making outrageous comments against Greece, including Erdogan's remarks that he said suggested Turkey could invade the Greek islands. I would advise anybody who dreams of attacks and conquest to consider 3 or 4 times, he said, after talks in Athens with French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna. We are in a position to defend our country, our independence, and territorial integrity.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Mari Yamaguchi of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Japan's defense minister said he has ordered a ministry-wide special investigation into growing reports of sexual assault after allegations of harassment were brought by a former soldier. Defense Minister Hamada's order came after a female former soldier, Rina Gonoy, came forward in late August to request a reinvestigation of an assault of her by former male colleagues last year. She also said she had received information from 146 service members who said they had been harassed while on duty. Hamada said the number of reported harassment cases has increased sharply in recent years, despite efforts by the ministry to prevent them, and that it is time for a thorough review of the problem. Harassment is a violation of basic human rights. It also shakes troop morale and absolutely should not happen, Hamada said. Hamada said the number of complaints of sexual, power, and other forms of harassment has risen from 256 in 2016 to 2,311 last year. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up here tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we will meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.